The Bulls are back and in full force steam ahead with Microsoft and Meta earnings that have just reported after hours at the time of this recording. Now, we have reached specific resistance targets that we have been targeting throughout the remainder of the last couple of weeks. If I've been watching some of my videos talking about 555 on SPY, talking about 474 on QQQ, and then up into that 480 target on QQQ. It is very key. We're right at those levels. How do we react in the morning? Can we spur into blue sky territory higher, or do we get a little bit of profit taking before we spur higher? We shall see as we continue throughout this earnings season, which is presenting some very interesting reports. Tesla also, at the time of this recording, I just read that they are proceeding with the board to maybe they have been looking at a secession for Elon as far as the CEO position. So that spurred a little bit of downside after hours for Tesla. We'll talk about that and the implementation of what that may look like for Tesla shareholders in the short term and potentially in the long term. All right. So I'll give some technicals, I'll give some fundamentals and the news side of things, and we'll hopefully finish this week off strong and also start a new month off strong as tomorrow is May 1st. And we're getting into the second month of Q2. All right. Without further ado, thank y'all so much. Those that are new, my name is Dr. B. I'm a holistic life and business coach and strategist for entrepreneurs and thought leaders. Right. You can check the links down below if you want to join our Discord platform, Leverage University, where we have entrepreneurial advice, thought leadership, spiritual advice, personal development, and also this trading floor. So it's a holistic Discord that you can improve not only your personal life, your mindset, your body, but also your finances with the skill set of trading. So if that is you, if you're more of a holistic person, not just a one-trick pony, but you do want to learn this skill set and you want to be around not just traders full-time or really people, regular folks, professionals, right, that also invest in the stock market, that also potentially have a job, that are also maybe full-time entrepreneurs, right? That's the place for you. We'd love to have you. All right. Without further ado, let's jump into it and go over what we have on the docket. Okay. So the first thing is let's jump into our earnings because that is what's spurring the market higher. If you haven't been keeping up with the fundamental data, that's the inflation data that has been affecting whether the Fed cuts rates or not, and how the employment rate is doing, how our personal consumption expenditure, our PCE reports, the market right now is pretty much saying, screw all those reports. Like, we hit a dip buy the dip. We were in a bull market for 2 years. This is just a little fear. We're going to buy it. I don't care about any tariffs. It's kind of like immune to this kind of tariff news, like fool me once, fool me twice type of situation, right? And we did get that news, in my opinion, that has spurred us higher, which was that 90-day pause. So what Trump has done is he's instilled that, right, to give traders and investors confidence to come back in the market heavily. Now, if I do believe personally that if the tariffs were still a little bit more on the table, right, we may have seen that bear flag come back down where we were rejecting and still forming lower highs. Now we keep forming higher lows to go higher. All right. And here are our earnings that have reported thus far this week. All right. We had a decent report from SoFi, Starbucks, poor outlook, double miss. Visa, I think, was pretty decent. I haven't checked out. We had Caterpillar, pretty decent, then sold off after during today's session. Microsoft, Meta blew it out of the water. Robinhood kind of flat. Qualcomm, I didn't read into their earnings report, but I did see the chart after hours did take a nosedive. So they must either missed or had poor guidance. And then tomorrow we have Eli Lilly in the morning, which should be very interesting, seeing that Eli Lilly is back to pretty much all-time highs. Does it spur higher above that 935 into the thousands? And then we have a stock split, or do they, they run a Netflix kind of thing, or do we see them pull back due to the uncertainty of the forward guidance? Okay. McDonald's always steady there. Amazon, Apple coming tomorrow after the close. All right. We do have ExxonMobil. It's always a decent one to watch in the fuel sector, in the energy sector, and Chevron as well. Okay. So heavy first week here of earnings. Next week should be a really nice week of trading. Personally, after all these have reported, we get those pops, we get a little consolidation, we see where we go from here, and then you start trading these names again. All right. Let's go into the charts. I just want to jump straight into it. because sometimes we go a little bit too deep on, I'll end off with the Tesla news and whatnot, but let me give some ideas for tomorrow, because a lot of you are inside of Leverage University and you also follow me here on the channel. So you may want to just know what's for the rest of the week, some ideas. Okay. So let's look at SPY as always first. And I'm going to go ahead and move this up right into this 560 level on SPY. Now you can see today we had a little bit, or excuse me, pre-market, we had a little bit of a sell-off here. Coming into the pre-market session. Okay. Now you never can predict where the bottom is until we react. And one key level we need to hold was roughly this 540 to 542. And what we did is we ticked down below it on a 4-hour time frame. If I go into my 30-minute, right, we can see a little bit of a double bottom here, where that was a pretty weak candle in my opinion, but the reclaim of 545 was key, which was right there. And then we continued, which was that pre-market low. So once it reclaimed that pre-market low, that was entry. We were going higher, right? And then it got a little bit stuck at 550, right? But there was a gap fill that was all the way back up to the 553 level, okay? And we filled that full gap at the end of the close, right? And Meta and Microsoft spurred the after hours session and the future session into that 560 level. Okay. So if you look here, we had a gap from the tariff news. This was a tariff drop at the beginning of the month. Okay. And then we had this, okay, this gap that was created. And we had another gap that was created. Okay. So it filled that gap pretty much to the upside of that 560 target, which we've been talking about. Okay. Now, what I like to do is I like to give it a little bit more room, right, into that 565 level, where I do have a little bit more interaction of sellers stepping in right there. So if we do decide to go a little bit higher, maybe, people get antsy and excited because, man, if Meta and Microsoft were good, man, they're going to blow it out of the water with Apple and Amazon. Let's just keep buying and buying and buying and buying and buying, right? We could get that continuation to the upside. Okay. So I'm going to watch 560 in the morning to see how we react and where we settle in. And if we spur higher above 560, right, we could see something like that. Okay. Above 560, hold 560, consolidate, and then push up into 565, which would ultimately be back up into those resistance levels of 565. Okay. If I turn on my moving averages here on a daily, okay, you're seeing that we're back above this 50 moving average, and the 200 daily, where it's very key that we react, is up into 570. You can see the 200 daily that we broke below, retested, failed, and then held below this orange line continuously. Now that we've reclaimed our 20, our 50, right? Now, if we fail back below the 50, which would be roughly 558, okay, and then back below that 555, I can see us maybe retracing a little bit deeper than we thought. Okay, so what you want to do is, in my opinion, okay, my suggestion for my technical people out there, if you're trading more specifically, I'll get to my long-term investors. Long-term investors, you're excited because you're like, oh, wow, it's up. Great. My portfolio's back up. Cool. You're not really concerned about the short term necessarily because you're in it for the next 5-10 years, right? I'm trying to educate here on this platform and just simply give information about how to read price action and where we may be headed, and where you can tell, hey, we're headed back to all-time highs. Okay. So right now it's clearing levels, holding levels, and we're back into a pretty much range here, right, between this 545 and roughly, just say if we close that right there, that 560. Okay. See this range right here that we've reclaimed. Okay. There's where I'm talking about that if we break above that 561, we can continue into that 570 level, 565, 570. Okay. So I'm watching this area very closely again. Brian, why are you watching it so closely? This is buy the dip opportunity. Buy the dip opportunity is because for those of you that haven't been watching, right, you still got to take in consideration, right, pullbacks, buys in the short term. But you still got to stay in consideration that this is still technically a lower high on a weekly time frame, right? And if we clear back above that 570, that's where I believe, okay, blue sky territories, we're back off. We've cleared back above the 200-day moving average. We're back up above 573. Great. We can maybe push a little bit higher back into all-time highs, okay, throughout the summer. All right. So that's my only, like, trying to give everyone the levels, because if you're trading more specifically, you're essentially trying to find the best entries. So someone could say, man, calls in the morning, and then you open up and enter calls right into resistance. We don't enter call option trades, or if you are trading equity or buying, you don't enter at resistance to the upside. You wait for those levels to either break out, clear, hold, and then take it up, or you've got to wait for a pullback. Very similar to this action that we had grinding up. I was telling my community, I'm not really interested in participating in this, right? You could scalp it back, goes up, grinds, right? It's grinding up until a trend breaks and gives you some movement, which it did pre-market today. You see how that trend broke right there? Let me get this off of here. Turn that my trend line, which is typically blue right there, right? See how that candle broke, retested that level. Now we can get some volume and some action picking back up. Okay. So same thing with this. If we pull back tomorrow, I'd be watching that previous day high, which would be 555 for a pullback, right? Or break above 560. And then you can consider where it's going from there and take it up. Because in the morning, what will happen is there will be a gap. Okay. There will be a gap in the stock right here. Okay. From 560 back down to about 556. Okay. It's about a $4 gap in SPY. Okay. So those are your levels on SPY. Watch 556 to hold. Okay. Watch 560 and see how we react there. Do we clear and give it some room and it squeezes up just a little bit more, right? Trap some bulls, pulls back, and then we can go higher. Or do we give it back and then we consolidate into Amazon and Apple earnings? It's possible. Okay. So nice move here. Great. Awesome. Let's go to QQQ. Right up into this 480 level. Now, what I'm interested in is seeing the pre-market or after hours here, that dip buy or that buy where we kind of held that 480, right? So does 480 just sit up here tomorrow, right? That is a possibility. So I've been in these trades before where you have this big gap, and I talked to my community members and whatnot inside of Leverage, just explaining the fact that we've got to wait for confirmation for that to come down, hold underneath 480, and then you can take the gap for the gap fill back down. Okay. That's the ideal trade, because this could just come back to 480 and then we could rip higher. Right. And then go higher. So you don't want to get caught in that first drop until it confirms and clears below that 480 if you are trying to scalp it short. Okay. So watch 480. I'm going to watch this 483 level. It looks like we're getting a little bit of resistance up into here. I kind of want to see some action after hours to see what it does here in the morning. If I start seeing it fade just a little bit, maybe a lower high, and then maybe a little bit of profit taking, we shall see. But those earnings were so strong that I do not want to assume that people are just going to take their profits. They may want to let it just run, right? Hey, we cleared. They had great earnings. I don't know who would short this. Just keep going, right? So there's QQQ. Watch 480. I'm going to watch up into that 483 and then 484, 485 level. All right. IWM didn't fill its full gap as it tried to back up to that 196 level. So maybe a pullback on IWM. Didn't really squeeze as much as SPY and QQQ. You see it grinded, fell, held that trend line right there. And it's just trying to grind back up to maybe, 198, 200. Okay. So I'm just watching, that underbelly 197, 198 right around there to see if it maybe wants to retest that one more time. All right. NVIDIA after hours, still very, very bullish here off of this 105. I was looking to get an entry into this 105 for a day trade. It was just kind of sitting here and grinding up here. I think this was a great dip buy opportunity. I think this was a amazing entry. For those in Leverage University, let me know down below. Like, we were watching this entry for today for a nice little quick day trade here, to the end of close and take it for a nice, $4 move into 109 for the gap. Okay, so that was an amazing 105 hold, this classic textbook break under, reclaim, and then hold. All right, that's what we call a reclaim. It breaks under, reclaims the level, right, of 105, which was very key, and then takes off. So now we're back up into an interesting territory here, because guess where we are? Right back up into a very key level of resistance at 114. Remember what I was saying? And if you don't remember, 116, you got to really clear above personally to really take off. Okay. 116, if it gets above 116 and then pulls back to 115 and holds, then we can take it up to that 120 level. Okay. So be careful tomorrow on NVIDIA, jumping straight into calls, wait for the pullback, maybe that down to 110. I'll be watching that level to see if that holds, right? 110. And I'll maybe be watching this little hold that we had here at 112 roughly. Okay, 111.50, 112. So I'll be watching those levels back below for a pullback. And that also means that if there's enough room for me to scalp it down for puts, I'll do that too. Okay. But I do not, like I said, with this strength, do not want to get caught right here and then it rips back up. Okay. So you want to enter against a market, right? If that's your play, into resistance so you can get the most risk to reward back down. Okay. So watch 114, 115. That is resistance right now. If it's already pulling back in the morning, the pullback's already happened. So it probably will somehow retest unless we get some type of data or something and the whole move gives back. This market right now is wild. Okay. So I'm not expecting for it to give the whole move back personally. Okay. Unless we get back below 110. That'll be the only way I see. Got to have multiple ideas. If we get back below 110, something like that, yeah, it's possible, right? But that's not the main idea I'm looking for, because dip buyers are here. Okay. And NVIDIA has earnings at the end of the month. So I'm pretty sure they are looking at this as a potential inverse head and shoulders. Maybe it's kind of ugly, but something like that. I would love for this gap to fill down below personally, but don't know if we're going to get that before their earnings. That could just be a nice trend line, gap up, reclaim 105, take off. Okay. So as long as it's above 105, right, we are bullish. Above 105, 106, still bullish right now. Okay. But you have a range between 105 and about 115, 114. All right. So there's NVIDIA. AMD, very bullish candle here. You can see it's coming very strongly off of that 93 level today. It took off almost immediately off the dip. Okay. Dip, rip. So that tells me that AMD is super strong. It may want to just squeeze above that 98, and it's got 102, 103 in sight. Okay. 102, 103 in sight. Okay. That's the next level that it may want to trend up to. So if it holds that 97, 98, right, and we start to find a hold here, you can maybe take a scalp a little bit further up into that gap fill up to 100 and then that 102, 103 level if we get strong. All right. So very strong on AMD. Got about a $2 to $4 range here that's still there on AMD to clear. Very strong push there. Hopefully it can just squeeze up into there. I mean, that'd be great if it can just go ahead and squeeze up into resistance, get it over with. But be watching these levels of pullback right there. Would be the ideal level that it wants to maybe pull back and hold at 98 to take off. All right. Google. Been watching all week, right? Google's got to get back above this kind of 163 level, right? Held that 157 pretty well. Okay. But Google really didn't push like the rest of the market. Even after a really good earnings, it fell off and then it's just been kind of grinding back up. So I just kind of want to watch Google as it's been relatively weak compared to the market. So I want to watch this 1.6 underneath this 163 level. If it remains underneath 163 and still struggling, right, may want to look at Google a little bit of a scalp back down to the downside. If it breaks above 163, then we're headed back to that 166. So if it gets above, then we can get back above, and go higher. So wait for that break, retest, hold, and then go. Okay. That strategy's been working very, very well as of late, but you see how Google's been kind of struggling after hours, popped and then still fading. A lot of top wicks here. You see here that it consolidated down here for a long amount of time until the end of the market just squeezed, but it really didn't rally like the rest of the market did. Okay. So that tells me a little something that Google may be slightly a little bit weak. And I do believe it has some more gap to fill down below if it does. Okay. So just watching this overhead resistance on Google right now, right there. Just watching that for right now. Don't want to get antsy to the downside because I know we're strong. Don't get it twisted. I'm not thinking always bearish, but it seems like we're just gapping up every time. Just every time I'm doing a video, it's like, oh, hey, the move's already happened. So long-term shares should be working for everybody. If you bought calls and you bought long-dated calls, should be working for you. Great, right? But every time I create a video, it just seems like, oh, the big bull move. We're in resistance again, folks. So I don't always talk about puts. Okay. Palantir, got nothing else to say. Got earnings coming up next week. It's back up to this 120 level. I think it can take off, but it's in resistance. So if I just look at it from a technical perspective, a little bit overbought there, up into this 120 area. You can see here, very heavy area up there that we broke back down below right at 120.55, and we're pretty much sitting there. Okay. You see how big that break was underneath that? So now that becomes resistance. So I'm watching this area of 120 anywhere in that zone. Okay. So this is just a grind up into earnings. Very big, massive move. Great. Right. But trading it, yeah, today was an awesome day to trade Palantir, in my opinion. This dip buy here filled the full gap and just ran from 110 to 118. Those contracts just went stupid. Okay. We're talking about a couple 100% on each. So the move happened so quick that I was like, man, I feel like I'm chasing. So anyways, let's go into Tesla. All right. Tesla had some news. Tesla board reportedly starting a CEO search process before Elon pulled back from Doge. Interesting. So before he pulled back, this is just a secession plan. Okay. He said he's pulling back from Doge, said he's going back into the helm of Tesla and going to make sure that it's running correctly, all those kind of things, innovation, and the promises that he made to shareholders. However, they have already been in plan to succeed him, right? And, they already been in, cahoots about giving him his money. So what does that mean? What does that mean for Tesla? Tesla's head of battery architecture departs. Interesting. It's always interesting. The news, it's not interesting. It's how they play the game. Okay. It's how they play the game. So Tesla right up into this daily 200, rejecting underneath that 291 and just sitting there. So it's in a very interesting spot. Now I'm going to say right now, Tesla is bullish. If you look at this, right? If it's sitting right here above not only that 9, but that 20-day moving average there above 270, it is technically broke, reclaimed, break, retest, sitting above that breakout area. Now, in my opinion, should have retested a little bit closer to that 260, but it's holding that 270 very well. If you notice, 270 is very important because that is the previous level that was resistance that we have now reclaimed and now holding above 270 with a decently bullish pin bar sort of candle on a weekly time frame. Right? If you can see right there, that's just propped up sitting there, ready to kind of blast off, take off, right? Back to that 320, 330 area. So Tesla, not really interested in trading it personally. Just going to watch what it does right here. It's interesting of what it's doing. I mean, you could look at this, as a bull flag, right? Breakout. That's more so what it looks like. But because it's Tesla, you just never know, right? It could fail this, pull all the way back down to 260. Just never know with Tesla. So keep an eye on that. Watching that 290, a lot of overhead here, but if it clears above that 293, that previous bullish high there, all right, we could see it take off above that 293. Okay, so watch Tesla for another breakout there, nice hold, and then also watch for the pullback and hold of 260. Amazon, Apple, they've got earnings coming up tomorrow afternoon. Qualcomm, there's the candle that I was talking about on Qualcomm. At the beginning of the video, right there, broke down, consolidated into earnings. I believe they had a revenue, logs higher revenue, profit, higher chip sales. Looks like they forecast revenue below estimate. So their forecasting was low. Looks like they had a double beat maybe. But they adjusted EPS greater, profit increase, beats estimate. So there's a perfect example. Beats estimates, profit, revenue, EPS, everything double beat, and then it sells off because of the forward guidance of Q3, because they don't know how to tell their shareholders, right, of what's potentially coming. They don't know, so they're not going to, far-fetch it saying, hey, we have everything in line, when they don't know the nature of the chip sector and how these tariffs are going to affect them. So that is not necessarily good for Qualcomm right now. Now, is this a dip buy right back into a support? Yes, they had an earnings beat. So look how that earnings beat pushed it right back down into that support of 140, right? So is this a takeoff area potentially, or is it a break of trend? I think it looks more like a break of trend right now. So I need to see where it settles in. Maybe I draw a little bit of support down here closer to this 130, see how it reacts at that level. If it holds 140, great. Or does it retest the low? And this is more of a kind of bearish flag right there, right, for a double bottom. So I'll be watching Qualcomm. It did get a nice movement after hours. That should affect NVIDIA just slightly, not too much. But if you're seeing Qualcomm, SMCI, right, all the chips struggling a little bit, right? So very interesting. The SMH breaking above this 215, very interesting here, but coming up into a resistance of 215. And then really it's got to clear above this 217. So the SMH is, again, that semiconductor ETF, okay, that we watch for the sector. And it does give a kind of an indicator of how that sector may move, if it's strong or not. So SMH coming up in that 215, 217 level where we rejected with the tariff news right there at 217. So SMH looks very similar to SPY and QQQ if you're noticing. So what do we do? All right, where's the 200? It's coming right up into that 50 moving average. Oh, that's going to be interesting. Right up into that area with a gap below. Right? Doesn't always have to fill a gap below, but for those that are new to me, right, anytime there's a gap up, I'm always, looking at that gap that needs to be filled. So is it here? And then we come back there with some news, right? Or do we pop up and we just continue running and then that gap gets filled back to the downside, right? Maybe in the fall. So just something to keep in mind. All right. I'll briefly mention crypto. Nothing really happening here other than it perched up here above this 93 and just consolidating, kind of that grind pop, right? Still very, very bullish. This looks like a very big bull flag. Nice hammer candle there on a weekly, followed by some volume there and continuation. We could see back into the six figures. Okay. Coinbase, same thing. Nice bullish structure coming into their earnings. Going to be very interesting coming up into next week. What does it do at this 200-day moving average? Okay, that would be a target for Coinbase in the short term. Will be back up in the 230 area. So nice little inverse head and shoulders. If it can retest back down here, that would be a beautiful inverse head and shoulders, in my opinion, right here. Back into that area and then take off will be great. So if we can have maybe one more little pullback here, back into that daily 20, at 185, 190, I think that will be a beautiful head and shoulders to take off right there. Neckline sitting pretty much around this 208 if you just want to round it to 210 area. So beautiful reversal, Coinbase, breakout, retest, go. All righty. Eli Lilly, going to be very interesting in the morning. Going to be very interesting with their earnings. And I only say interesting in their earnings because does it make a Netflix move? All right. Back into all-time highs, which is roughly around 960, not just say 960. Does it do something like that and gives that 960 move? 50, 60, $70 move to the upside. The only reason I'm a little bit iffy about that personally, which I was telling my community about, is because anytime my earnings is pushing up into it significantly, I treat it very similarly. If I'm not already in to like, hey, how would I normally trade this? All right. It's pushing up into resistance. Is it overvalued for the short term? Right? Is there some uncertainty with some of the weight loss drugs, the competition with Hims, hers, competition with Novo Nordisk and their GLP-1 weight loss drug, right? So just something to watch out for, to consider what it may do. It could just take off, or it could pull back into the mid to low 800s. We don't know, right? But this is an extremely bullish push into the end of close and after hours. If you can see there, just bullish push for, in my opinion, other than the market pushing. Yeah. So we shall see in the morning what it does. I was referencing a couple of things on this one, which was, it's not the same. Okay. But I was referencing one of the earnings that was in Q3 of last year, which it was already downtrending here. It was in resistance. This is a little bit different. We were forming lower highs here versus this, we're forming higher lows. All right. Sitting right in this kind of 900 to roughly 920 level. Okay. Would you look at this area here, and then that earnings came in, dropped us from 905 back down to, 700s. Okay. So it is possible for, that gap, maybe from the announcement of Weight Watchers, to get filled. I mean, I don't, have that a question. Same thing like I did with, here on UNH, which UNH is forming a nice daily hammer candle there for a reversal. Very similar here, coming into their earnings, very bullish, right? For the earnings push the week prior, and then just earnings due to a lot of unforeseen things. And obviously people in insurance and whatnot, their numbers got affected for Q1. All right. So that was more of expected. This is a little bit different scenario, but there we go. This is insurance just because it's in healthcare. Yeah. But this is more insurance than the healthcare sector. Okay. And the pharmaceutical sector, biopharm. So that is possible. There was a gap here as well that was right there, that it gapped up right before earnings, squeezed into resistance, and then earnings brought it right back down. So I'll come back to this video if it works out or not. We shall see. But something that I was looking at for earnings and what it may do. Now, UNH, very nice hammer candle here. This is what I was watching for UNH to just grind down into here, form a nice hammer bottom candle on a higher time frame, a daily, a weekly, and it's forming it. It might be time for, and it's a big player. Okay. It might be time for that UNH reversal. Okay. It might be time for that UNH reversal. And I think it's going to be a slow reversal back up, right? It's going to grind back up to the upside until it starts getting some positive news. Something's going to come in. So take a look at UNH at $400. at least retracing back to 450 and then 500. It may take a couple of months. All right. Well, that being said, thank y'all so much. No, a little bit longer video. As always, I try to be as thorough as possible, give you some ideas. Make sure you check out our Discord here. You're more than welcome to go to brianmceldery.com. All right. When you go to that, you can read a little bit more about myself, that I'm not just here on YouTube, just a trader. I've been an entrepreneur full time for the last 8 years, right? Former pharmacist. And there you go. I do one-on-one coaching. There's our main Leverage University. If you just want to join our Discord and our community, it takes you right to our WAP platform. And then our trading boot camp is offered once a month. Those are for people that, need a little bit more, 3-day one-on-one virtual attention, where I'm walking through how to enter a trade, how to do this, support and resistance, setting your charts up. And I have even some, advanced or intermediate people that just come in and want to hear like what my thoughts are. How do you get this idea? How did you know I was going to do this? Right. So you're more than welcome to sign up for that. I think it's a great entry spot. And there is a discount code right now, early 100, early 100, early 100. All right. Looking forward to see you in there. And also inside of our Discord, if you need more mentorship, support, entrepreneurial advice, things of that nature, personal development, life coaching, that is where our Kairos mentorship program comes in. All right. Peace, love, and blessings to you. Thank y'all so much. As always, I appreciate you for giving up of your time. Until next time, finish off this week strong, start the new month strong, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.